Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. And as usual, I uncover everything out there. It comes to me in one way or another because I've reached this state of Gnosis. So, knowing truth isn't exactly pleasant either. Knowing the filth, rotting, disgusting, butt-crack reality of this existence certainly isn't necessarily pleasant, but it's all part of ascension and getting the hell out of prison camp Earth. Now, one of the issues that's been going on for a long time, and I briefly covered this in other audios, but it's important that we go to this issue in particular because it's pointed out by the dumb bunker, S&M practitioners, clown college graduates, convicted felons, and all around goofballs, otherwise known as idiot skeptics and dumb bunkers. So, as we move into these things, let's talk about the very famous case of Uri Geller and Johnny Carson. The very famous Johnny Carson, in his time, for a particular period of time, he was super, super popular. I mean, people stayed up late at night just to watch him. Everybody went on his show, and he certainly was one of those things that people was a sensation at the time. And talk shows were very big then. I don't know, late 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. So everybody was on there. He was a sensation. And if you went on the Carson show, of course, you were guaranteed a certain amount of success. But part of this in the 70s is the phenomenon known as Uri Geller, who was brought over here by Andrei Pisharik and maybe some others. It's a little bit confusing. Does it matter? No. So the whole idea is that we need to fully understand that he did all sorts of demonstrations on many different talk shows. Now, again, Merv Griffin, he went on after Carson, and there were several other people that were out at that time. But, talk shows were very big back then. It was something late at night that adults did in a quiet, private environment, and something that everyone enjoyed. I don't believe talk shows are as big today as they were, and I was always a big talk show fan myself and used to watch hours and hours of it when they were on, going from the different shows that are still going today. And of course, I think they've kind of changed today. They've become more goofy instead of interviews with celebrities or just interesting people. But Johnny Carson, at the height of Uri Geller's fame, had him on as a guest. And if you can call that as a guest when you rig something, try and make them look like a fool, and try to, quote, unmask them because you think you know better. Now, this is a pretty dark, really screwed up story that everybody should really understand. This is the dark side of Johnny Carson. It has quite a dark side, by the way. And we're going to do another particular video on Johnny Carson. Who was he really? And we can go back into his history and find out the kind of person that he was. But let's get back to the issue of him. Now, one of the things that Johnny Carson was big into pretty much all of his life, even not only as a child, but per information on the net, stated that he took his magic tricks with him into the Navy, and that he even did a magic trick on a high-ranking naval, I don't know, it was admiral, whatever. And you just thought this was wonderful. He called it the highlight of his Navy career. Of course, like most Navy guys, they don't really do much of anything but smell each other's bottoms in the typical tough Navy fashion. So, these are things that have to be understood as well. Who was this guy? And I'm going to go into him, as I said, in a separate video. But let's get down to his typical show. Now, first of all, the Johnny Carson show is in no way at all a reference to be used as a scientific medium. Television studios, and I've been in many of them. As a person from Southern California, I went to many studio shows. Kind of fun. You go see game shows, talk shows, etc. And you go in there, and it's a different experience. It's something that very few people really experience, because if you don't live in Los Angeles or come here on vacation, you don't know how studios work. Well, how does a live taping work? What does it really look like? I mean, generally these stages are fairly small. and you think they're giant auditoriums. Well, they're not, and for the most part. So how does it work? What does the audience do? What are all the ifs, ands, and buts of it? How is it filmed? What is the... So this is always kind of interesting, and I've always found it to be something fun. And, I always like to know, well, what goes on behind the scenes? So what you see broadcast is something that has been sanitized, cut up, and put into a time slot. Well, that's not how it necessarily is live. Now, if someone does something wrong in a taped kind of live show, well, of course, you and the audience hear it. Now, whether that's edited out later depends on the show and everything else. So we just don't know depending on what it is. A lot of things are edited strictly for time. So if you have 45 minutes and you go too long, 50 minutes, well, they got to take 5 minutes out of there. Well, where do you do that? So things get cut out very easily. So most people don't know this, and most people know nothing about Hollywood, and even though I wasn't that heavily involved with it, I've been interviewed on many, many radio shows. I've done CNN, BBC, etc. I know how the little Hollywood goobahs work. These little troll monkeys that somehow think they're better than you and don't want to pay you a dime while they drive away in Rolls Royces. It's always amusing. They cry they have no money, and they live in million-dollar mansions and drive hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cars. So it's the same old story. But, that's Hollywood, and I'm not sure it's any different anywhere else. They take a lot of grief because it's so ostentatious. But the bottom line is everybody tends to be a scumbucket. We certainly can look at Amazon, who doesn't want to pay its employees. So it goes on and on and on with these types of situations that we need to understand. And you, as a viewer, don't really understand what's going on. Well, the real story here is pretty dark and very typical of Johnny Baby, which I will go into in my other audio on him. But the point is that Johnny was a real weird egg anyway. But he thought he was some sort of genius because he learned magic to, I can I was a kid and I made a card disappear. I'm like a genius. And since people like that, they're all stupid and I'm smart. So this is the reality, apparently, of every magician out there who thinks that everybody is a gullible idiot because they have very well-made and staged props to trick you. And what are you supposed to do? So they're all tricks. Some of them cost less than $5 that are quite, quote, amazing. So what happened with the Johnny Carson? He was on that show. He was a phenomenon. He was starting watches and doing bending spoons everywhere. This guy was performing amazing feats, and they weren't just for the audience or for the people being filmed there. People would put watches on top of their TVs, which I did, and they were broken watches. Well, what was going on? So the whole idea is this is quite fascinating. But it's all a magic trick, but you don't see Unamazing Randy, the other ones, doing those kind of feats, do you? And if you watch them bend something, you see the little tricks they do. All you have to do is be a little bit knowledgeable and watch carefully. So, as they say in the police department, it's the hands that kill you, so you got to watch the hands. It's the hands that do the tricks, so that's what you got to watch. So, now, Uri Geller's been verified by top scientists for over 50 years. Andrew Pusharek, the medical doctor and great researcher and inventor of so many things, tested him for months and months and months, maybe even years, where he spent huge amounts of time with him, testing him and proved him. He was tested by scientists, Russell Targ, Hal Puthoff. These aren't just some little guy that got a certificate, like Jeffrey Mishlove, who, I got my name on a certificate. I know something. Well, it isn't bozos like him. These guys were laser scientists with PhDs. So, working for the government yet again, and there are many other ones that Geller got into contact with, and he was constantly being tested by everyone. If you meet anybody who met Geller, they have a story, and they all tried to prove him. Hey, what's this? What did I just draw? And every single time, these people have stated that he got it right. Oh, it's a trick. It's a trick. It's a trick. Yes, Unamazing. Are you hanging out at the library, Unamazing, picking up on little boys? So, here we go again. So the whole idea is that these kind of guys that do this kind of nonsense are constantly trying to berate people. Now, Geller, and of course he's supposed to be, as a scientist there, well, I want to be poor and do boring shows and make a nickel on the street corner with a cup. Oh, not a cup. I'm a little bit more sophisticated. I have a hat. While Penn Jillette, the guy who wants to show you his dungeon, to get dates, I guess, and makes hundreds of millions of dollars with his buddy pal, who was a Latin high school teacher. Teaching a dead language just like kind of his head. Not too alive, is it? So the whole idea, and all the rest of these people who put on games and who trick people like Chris Angel, who says, I don't do tricks. No, this isn't a trick. This is what I do. No, you do tricks, Chrissy boy. That's what it is. It's an idiot trick. And you can rip people off. So the whole idea is what is the reality there. So we all need to understand. Getting back to Johnny. Here's Johnny. Who so many people watched him that there was a noticeable decline in after the monologue of people flushing their toilets. Interesting. But I mean, that's how popular he was. Now, I've never really, I never thought he was a great interviewer or anything else, but he had all the top people on, and there were some real characters in the 70s and 80s, like Burt Reynolds and Robert Blake, and he had all the big people on, and they had real personalities, unlike the people of today. So, it was a fun show, and as I said, a lot of people watched. So what did he do? He got Uri Geller, and his producer booked him. And they went ahead and set him up. The first thing that Johnny did is got a hold of Sweet Cheeks Unamazing, Randy, and put together a discussion of how they could entrap Uri Geller. So, what are we going to do to get this guy? Don't let him do nothing, Randy said. Don't let him look at it. Don't let him touch it. Don't let him in the same room with it. Put him in the parking lot. I mean, this is the kind of absurd things that they were doing. And, of course, Mr. Johnny, oh, well, I did a little card trick when I was 12. I'm a Navy boy. Yes, I'm going to trick him because I'm a genius and he's a fraud. And, of course, Johnny, who got an acting degree, but he got a minor in physics because he didn't really want to go into physics because that would have took real work, but he thought he was smart. Me smart. I have a minor in, how do you spell it? Physics, FHT. Oh, wait a minute, that's too hard for me. I was in the Navy. So the whole idea is that all of these people, so he thought he was some sort of genius, and of course he talked with the genius of all genius, the little turd known as the Unamazing Randy. Whose claim to fame is, I don't graduate from high school. I learn on the streets. So the whole idea is that this is the kind of level that you're going to get from all the dumb bunkers and idiot skeptics. So as we understand, so they set him up. The producer went in there and had 40 questions. Because, what you don't know is they have pre-interviews. When they interview somebody to go on a show, they already have the questions made out that the host is going to ask them. And almost all talk show people have these cards in front of them. And what are they? They're questions. And writers come up with questions. Because the host is just that. He's a host. He's a talking head. He makes jokes. He can't think for himself. Most of them are fairly ignorant, dumb people. So what they do is they give you questions that you can answer the person. And again, writers can come up with good questions. You don't know the movie they're doing now or the things in the past, so it is good to have help to get into certain discussions with people. But you don't know that as a person watching it. You think this is a conversation. It's about much of a conversation as a written speech is, because that's what it is. So what they do is they wrote down 40 questions for Uri Geller, and the producers go back, and of course they have usually pre-interviews where they ask you questions and you respond to them. I know that sounds weird, but they want to see if you can talk. One of the problems with reality shows is most people have trouble putting 4 words together or talking 2 sentences right after each other. I don't know who you know, but most people don't really communicate well. It's grunts and moans and the occasional passing of gas. So the whole idea is that's what you get from most people. They can't really communicate well. That's why people who are MCs, master of ceremonies, earn their money even though they don't write anything, because they can talky good and they can make it jokies. So the whole idea is the average person goes, and next, hello. This is what you get from people. So keeping that all in mind, they write this. So they went in there and they gave him the full frontal attack, you know. So they went in there and said, we're going to ask you all these questions. And of course, if they don't go over the questions with you in detail, they want you to know so you can think your answers out. And that's part of it, or shows get boring. So if you know the question ahead of time, you can kind of think, oh yeah, I remember that story from them, and I can say this and I can say that. It makes the show more interesting in a bigger picture. The whole idea is that if you're a really good MC, you would just wing it. But, very few people can do that like I can. And there are some that do it and most don't. So they went in there, and when he came out, he was under the impression, because they never told him, they were going to tell him that he was going to do any kind of psychic feats. They said, we're only going to ask you questions. They did not mention that they were going to set up an entire table there. And you can find this on YouTube. And there's a lot of people that say that Uri Geller failed. Another lie perpetrated by the dumb bunkers, the idiot skeptics, who have to lie because everything they say is wrong. Just like the unamazing Randy did all the time. He fabricated constantly on everything he could to build his own opinion. So this is all part of the reality there that goes on. So they tricked him, and this is very typical of producers anyway. If they can make a good show by making you out as a fool, tricking you or whatever, that's what they did. That's certainly what the BBC did with me when they wasted 12 hours of my time and put on 3 minutes. They decided what the 3 minutes would be, and they could do anything with that. This is how these scum buckets work, and particularly that fraudulent guy that interviewed me. So, who was nothing more than a crank working for the intelligence agencies, and I think we can all pretty much verify that. And of course, made sure he made lots of money off of me, while I got nothing for it. So, that's how the media works. Under pseudo news programs. They're not news programs at all. So, they are basically shows that make lots of money for the people involved in it. So, now that we get those things together, we all fully understand of what that's about. So, what's it about is the fact that he was set up, and he knew it the minute he walked in there. You can see his face when they brought out onto the coffee table there that usually holds coffee cups. That's why it's called a coffee table for those experts out there. When they set up all these things there, and you could see his face of, what the F is this? And his first response is that you didn't tell me you're going to do this. I got a whole bunch of questions they told me you were going to answer me. I thought this was questions. And Johnny said, well, we can talk about questions as we want to, and you can look like an idiot not doing this. Ha ha! I'm Johnny! Do-do-do-do-do! I'm the dummy Carson! Do-do-do-do-do-do! So the whole idea is that this is what you get from old Johnny. So they set him up in a nasty way. The producers were involved with it. Everybody was involved with it. It was quite a nasty, mean thing to do. But, that was also very typical of Johnny. And everybody who knew Johnny knew him as an arrogant little dick. Plain and simple. This was very typical of Johnny and his whole family for that matter. Particularly his producer's son. And of course, the Carson Productions went on and produced things like the Raymond Show, whatever Raymond Show, etc. And he produced a few other things that he did as well and made a lot of money. But I know for a fact that his son, who was killed in a car accident, was involved with, let's say, less than reputable people. So the whole idea is that this is a fact again. So. All of these things are very interesting when you look at them. So it was a tire setup, and what did Uri do? Uri did the smart thing. I'm being set up. God knows what they're trying to do here. And instead of just saying, well, I'm not going to do it because that would look bad and kind of, he had manners, kind of rude to your host. So what he really did is he said, gee, I'm just not feeling it tonight. I really just can't perform, which was very smart of him. So the point is a lot of people thought that this would somehow hurt his career. It certainly didn't. It actually, his popularity soared afterwards. He then a week later went on Merv Griffin and was a huge hit. So the whole idea is that we need to quite understand that. So Johnny, in his very disreputable, backstabbing way, which he was known for in personal life, deliberately set him up with the unamazing Randy as his helper. Like, I guess he didn't know what to do as a magician. He couldn't figure it out himself. He had to call unamazing Randy. But the dirty, dirty part of Johnny old Carson, and here's the kicker to it all, people, and the fact is Johnny Carson gave literally millions of dollars to the James Randi Foundation. So he wasn't looking for it. He wasn't seeking truth. He wasn't here to test, just as the James Randi Foundation was nothing more than a con artist game to discredit people. He never had any intentions of giving anything away. People with power, he refused even to contact and get involved with. So if he had very few people he actually tested, and the ones he did test, of course, I have the money, I decide what's going on, I do the tests, and I decide if you win. And I decide if I give my $1 million away to you, end my career, end my organization, because you've proved to me that this is real. So it's a joke. That's not scientific. Now, as getting back to all this stuff, it's not only was Johnny Carson giving millions of dollars to the James Randi Foundation, which has been documented in their foundation documents, is that he was all part of this big, nasty conspiracy against people and supporting them at this level. Pretty pathetic that someone would do this to set somebody else up. This is mean and deceptive of a person in a media that this is supposed to be fun and everything else. It is not his job to unmask people on a television show in a studio with a studio audience in front of them. This is not a scientific way to test anybody, regardless of whether he is successful or fails. The fact that being put in a situation like that and being in a stressful environment where you can't concentrate, where there's groups of people with big giant apparatus around you called television cameras, which were huge at the time, maybe 3 or 4 feet long, 2 or 3 feet wide, and a couple of feet deep. You're talking, and they're moving around in different ways. There's 30 or 40 people moving around you, and you're kind of like on a stage. And then you've got about 200 people in the audience looking at you, and you've got hot lights on you from all directions. So you're living in this very fake environment. You're on a pedestal with people looking at you. The best way to kind of get the people to understand this, if you've never been to a TV taping, is the fact it's like being in a zoo. You got a bunch of people around you and you're being stared at. So this is certainly not very comfortable, regardless of how seasoned of an entertainer you are. Some entertainers throw up every time they go out on stage. Bob Newhart was famous for that, and many other ones. They were so nervous. So these are quite common. So this is a very unscientific, terrible place to test anyone and potentially ruin their entire life. Thank you, Johnny. We know what kind of morals you had. So when you passed it down to your kiddies too, didn't you? So the whole idea is that this is the kind of nonsense that goes on to set somebody up like this. So having somebody do something and telling them, well, I don't know, it didn't look too great to me, or geez, I don't know what to say about that. That's what a host would do. You invited this guy on. And of course, he's paid to be there. But he's not coming on there and being paid for you to discredit them in a pseudo-scientific manner. Now, this is very typical of dumb bunkers. They want to do things completely pseudo-science. Now, pseudo means false. I've never seen a scientific lab that has an audience and guys running around with television cameras with giant hot lights on people. Now, scientific people do photograph things, and they have hidden and other types of cameras, and people know they're being filmed, but in a non-aggressive way, and they don't have 10,000 light bulbs on them, etc. So it's a very fake, weird environment. So this is not science. Just like Unamazing Randy's giveaway of $1 million had nothing to do with science or scientific protocol. Third parties have to give tests. Third parties have to decide whether something is successful, not you that has to write the $1 million check. But of course, the people behind his organization, which include internet fake millionaires and military officers, ought to tell you the kind of organization that they are. So this is what they're there. Now Banachek, another magician, is kind of running that dirt soup organization. God knows what they're doing, but you can guarantee none of that. So it's all garbage, and the fact that you can trick people means absolutely nothing. So the bottom line is that it's garbage. It's lies. Carson went ahead and set him up. He was a big-time supporter of Unamazing Randy, giving him huge amounts of money, and this was his whole way to discredit and ruin Uri Geller's life based on nothing more than horrible scientific, pseudo-scientific tests on a TV show. So regardless, as I said, whether he's successful or not on a TV show, proves absolutely nothing. It is what it is, entertainment, and nothing more. He went and was tested by real scientists and basically was successful, extremely successful. So, by people in proper environments who filmed him, and who, by the way, Russell Targ was another Johnny O. Carson. He was, from his childhood, heavily interested in theatrical magic, plain and simple. So he wasn't tricked either by the little things that Uri Geller possibly could have done. So he's an amazing person, whether you like him or not. Most people that met Uri Geller always find him to be highly charismatic. Now, whether you like his ways or what he's doing or what he's accomplished, well, we really don't know any of that. It's sad that a guy like him has to be forced into the magician's arena to make money later in life, because there are no psychic shows going on. And if there was psychic and spiritualist shows going on, these people would be terribly attacked as frauds, plain and simple. So why isn't there psychic shows on? There used to be hypnotist shows on. I remember there was a woman who did shows in the 70s called the Hypnotist. I think it was Pat something, I can't remember at this point. But there were shows like this. There's no reason why you couldn't have psychics go through audiences and give them readings. I've been to, not shows, but to psychic events where psychics read people one after the other. Now, I don't know if that's interesting or not, but I think a great stage show could be made that way. A stage show featuring the top psychics around the world, people bending spoons, doing other things for real, contacting spirits, etc. You could make some pretty amazing shows out of that were fascinating and real. And of course, this is what spiritualists did in the 1920s and even earlier. And they left the magicians holding their hats with no people to come to their shows. So they attacked them. The bottom line, even if they were fake, so what? The bottom line is they're fascinating. They're interesting. Is it real or is it not? Isn't that what Chris Angel and Blaine and all the rest of them do? Even Penn and Teller, who claim to everybody, well, this is all fake. Really? Is that really what the audience thinks? Are they coming to a fake show because it's fun to see fake stuff? No, they're being amazed by the trickery, and in the back of their mind, they're always wondering, is this some sort of master occultist? Of course, Blaine pushes this, and so does Chris Angel, who's coming out with this mystical attitude that he has some sort of power. They're very hypocritical, and most magicians have done that throughout the years. So it's all a big game and a lie, and you're the sucker. And I would never go to a magic show ever again. And it's sad that we don't have psychic shows. As I said, I've been to psychic, quote, meetings where there's 50, 60 people, and they have 4 or 5 psychics, and they break people up into different psychics, and you get readings. And they all have their own way of doing things. So well, what does that mean? That means the fact that this could be done and could be very powerful and very successful involved in this entire process if people went out and do that. This could be a fantastic Las Vegas show. So keeping that all in mind is something that could be a fantastic thing to show realism out there and to get psychics going and to get people like Uri Geller making the money they should. Why should Penn and Teller be worth $150 million each, and Uri Geller, who's done okay, is worth, God, I don't know what he's worth, a few million, but he's done okay because of doing a lot of garbage stuff, particularly in recent years. Why should he not? Why should all psychics not be wealthy by showing off their power and doing it in a stage way? Well, they're credible people. And a lot of psychics are wealthy from what they do, but they don't do shows because it makes them look like fools. So this is all part of the process, part of what's going on to actually figure out how to do all these things in a fun manner. People, as I said, most magicians, of course, the big magicians, are stinking wealthy. And we've done several different talks on them. So that is something to consider of what's going on. But the dirty secret here is that Johnny Carson was there to ruin someone's life, unmasking them like he has the right to unmask anybody on an entertainment show that's on 11:30 at night. And what qualifications does he have? I was a kid magician. What are we talking about here? This is insulting and shows the kind of low-level person that Johnny Carson was doing, setting up a guest that he has on his show. This is horrific. And this is a horrible thing to do, and he should be put on. Uri Geller did not fail on that show. He refused to go through on a setup that was put in front of him and got out of it as a gentleman or someone who was smart would do, saying, I just don't feel up to it. But he basically said that he was set up and was not going to be performed. He stated, why aren't you asking me questions? You didn't tell me about this. That's an unfair thing to do to anybody. So it's very important that you, as everyone listening, understands that, because there's a lot of fallacy that goes on with that whole show and people saying he failed. He didn't fail. He didn't go through with it because it was a setup. And quite frankly, considering Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show, and being connected to a disreputable liar like the unamazing Randy, why would you possibly put yourself in harm's way to be disgraced by something that was probably 100% rigged against him? Houdini rigged things. He made sure that psychics couldn't get answers and so forth. He did all sorts of nasty, underhanded things to make sure that psychics and spiritualists failed, including setting up fake shows and him doing spiritualist shows himself, which he did for a few years. This is the kind of people that these magicians are. They're completely disreputable people. They tend to be totally and complete fabricators, and they make up things. They skew the results in their favor. They are not seeking truth. They are seeking to empower themselves and to keep their paycheck going. The minute they prove anything, their job is over with. Make sure you understand that anytime you listen to, read, or have contact with a dumb bunker, because they have a hidden agenda and they're being paid to make sure they make sure they go out and find people to harass. Like, we need to know that Popoff, the tent show evangelist, isn't real. I mean, anybody who's seen that show, this is something like from 1850 where he screams people's names out. Is there anything wrong with that? Well, I'm not sure there is. There's an awful lot of trickery that goes on in the society. People in white coats that say they're going to cure you. People in blue coats that think they're there to help you. There's a lot of trickery in this world. And they're all liars and deceivers. At least someone like Popoff is out there giving people the proven medical treatment. The treatments that modern science depends on. That says works the best of anything. We don't have no cures. No. We can't do that. We can't figure that out. We have The god of cures? Placebos. This is what they tell you, that placebos are amazing. They work all the time, which is, of course, a fraud as far as I'm concerned. I don't believe it for a second. So the whole idea is that that's what they give you. Medical science, if you can call it that, medical tomfoolery, is nothing more than deceptions and lies. And ultimately it comes down to the fact that I give you a sugar pill, and even some cases they tell you it doesn't work, and people get cured. So at least something's happening there, just like with Popoff, who's telling people about their relatives and everything else, and got cards that people filled out. So what? If you're that gullible, well, that's your problem. And spiritualists have always been helping people with contacting those on the other side that they are horribly missing. And just being able to contact them and them saying that I am fine, things are okay, I hope you're doing well, is a kind of catharsis reality that should be perpetrated by people. After all, isn't that what medical science? Isn't that just a placebo as well? But it's been proven, contact with people who have died. This has been proven without a doubt now in modern research. Let's all start understanding what truth is and who is really seeking it. And this certainly isn't these talk show hosts, certainly was never Johnny Carson, and certainly was never an Amazing Randy and his cohorts of criminals, clown college graduates, and just really bad people. Until next time.